Okay, the next item is item number 9. It's an application for a certificate of appropriateness at 150 Thompson Street in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District Extension, docket number 15-7022, block 516, lot 26, a neo-Greek-style store building designed by D&J Jardine and built in 1880 to 81. This is an application to replace ground floor infill and install a marquee.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Emma Waterloo, Preservation Staff. The item before you is for 150 Thompson Street, also known as 478 West Broadway, in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District Extension. The through block building is located just south of West Houston Street, as shown on this map. These are the 1940s and 1980s tax photos, and this is the existing condition today. The proposal will focus on these two bays, which are the residential entrance for the building. So here is the proposal. It includes replacing the entrance infill here with black anodized aluminum and glass doors, installing blackened steel cladding at the transom and at the adjacent bay here. Installing a steel marquee, which is a little hard to read, but it goes right over the doors, and then cutting back this awning so that it just relates to the storefront here. The project applicant is here to further explain the proposal and answer your questions.
Thank you, Emma.
Hi, my name is Farnaz Mansouri, and we're the architects. Isbek and us are the architects of this project. We are renovating the lobbies as well as the entrance only in this bay. The main part of the project, as was just described, is sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Is this issue. There is a cast iron that was amputated in the 1940s, and my clients would like that restored. That's primary issue. But the reason this cast iron was amputated is because they needed to put an elevator behind this wall, and there's some work that was done at that time, we understand now. And this sort of wood cover was put on, I don't know, 20 years ago at least, and we just recently took it off to see the condition of the brick. So our proposal, by bringing the cast iron down, and this steel kind of staying here in this storefront remaining part of the gallery space, our scheme is about how to distribute the space between these two bays, which is 7'4", and sort of optimize it to be contextual in some way for the building. The street itself is very is everywhere. So as part of and then of course the awning, as you see, is covering his store, which I suppose rightly so. But we discussed with them that if it's possible for them to push back so we can see the cast iron column straight up. And so the change would be that we would bring the cast iron down. We would cover the existing brick, reasons I'll explain later. We would expose this sort of clean fully from the main beam that's up here. This is, you're not seeing the glass go all the way up, but we showed half of it, so you see it's really nothing structural or any sort of reference above the door, and this is what we're sort of cutting back. And then we are putting the sign, the number of the building on the back plane, but we did propose that we would have a steel, as shown here, canopy, or we call it awning, but marquee, whatever the right word is, but it's a very thin piece, and we have an example of something similar later. This is the existing building. We do have this sort of overhang above us of the fire escape, and this is sort of the demolition plan. This is the proposed plan. We sort of created an arbitrary line, essentially, of what the within this bay, what might be the line where the glass door would stop, and the transom, or in this case, solid transom, would begin, because we don't really have any reference along here. Right now, this is some kind of a green awning from the last storefront, and this is the gray awning for these guys. This is just a close-up And the complexity of the problem is literally that this does not belong to us, so it's not easy to make this look conveniently entrance. It's really just this door that's the entrance. And it's the idea of how to make this as wide as possible. So to counter the width, which is a large door, we made it as tall as possible, so it doesn't look fat and squat, rather elegant and slender. These are sort of before and well, actually these are sections. This is a section through the area which has been plywooded, and this is proposed section through, actually the existing section through the existing building. There is a beam here that we know of. And this is the proposed section with the new canopy or the marquee, and this is the canopy beyond. Getting closer to the detail, we're putting the steel sort of fascia here to clean up that line of the lintel. And there is a steel sort of, not a lintel because well, it is a lintel, it's supporting this, but the lintel is really further up as well. It's really a filler. This is the beam right here, the big beam. Back to the existing, this is the condition that our original proposal was to sort of restore the brick, but after seeing what it was and that it's probably a back brick and it will never look good or clean or even like what is up here, we, with the staff, sort of came to terms with maybe just covering it with steel and making it not necessarily high industrial, but it was an industrial building. It does not have some of the characteristics of Soho's cast iron, deep cornice type of building. So to make it work somehow in a proportional, harmonious way. Some other conditions, well, this is a close-up of the condition. And then, of course, it's a surprise to us that in the 40s they amputated cast irons as well. It's not just later. This is a hole, but there's nothing here. Just more detail, taking us up to the underside of the. This is our canopy, the fire escape. This is just a quick glance at the street. This is a complicated and complex street because it has some super modern but well done buildings, and it has some nice stone building and cast iron, and it has a little bit of everything. We really can't compete with some of the good buildings of Soho here. This building is not Class A Soho building. I would say it's a building that just wants to look clean, organized, and somewhat industrial, and not overly industrial. But we show in examples of some industrial buildings that we didn't think were too faux of the sort of historicism idea, and rather worked for us. So the idea of the steel and some studs is what we have also as well. This is just a sort of an inspiration image. I don't particularly love this, but it was done, and it's a famous architect. But it uses the nuts and bolts of steel with steel. We showed this not because of the signage, but the steel piece that just sort of comes out, and we found that to be sort of very much better than if we had a major marquee. We just wanted a thin overlay to sort of mark the entrance and not be necessarily something that stops the flow of your sort of trajectory or axis of view. And this is our palette. Basically, we're using steel. We're using the black anodized aluminum, which is not exactly the stock stuff. It's the better quality. It allows the door to be somewhat lighter, right next to the piece of steel. And this would be the palette. That's it.
Thank you. Are there any questions? The storefront right now is just so awful that anything could sort of help this out. So the idea of going back to bringing back that column, I think, is a great improvement. Yes, Roberta?
I was just going to ask about materials. It's difficult to tell what that actually looks like. I mean,
Yeah.
this looks, the drawing and that.
This is
sample
black
that you showed.
cast iron. This is the steel that would be blackened sheets of steel with use of some studs to sort of put them in panels. This also would be the same material.
And
This
what's at
is
the bottom of that panel?
this.
Yes, what's that?
That stone? What is that?
Pardon?
What material is that?
We're actually working away, we're keeping the brick there. Let me just show it to you how. There is brick there in the, behind here, there's brick, and we just cleaned it up. And we assumed we can clean it up. This is a big question, of course. We can cover it with steel, but we thought the bulkhead to be something else, and maybe it's original, and possibly darkened. And so that's why you see it sort of whitewashed a bit. It's not red-orange. We don't know exactly the condition. We hope to restore the brick, maybe sandblast that, so that it has that sort of faded look, but it's not steel.
Well, why is that brick better than the other brick? You're saying that the brick that you're
Well,
covering up is bad.
it's
but
not that
you
it's-
think that this brick is better?
There are two types of brick here. I never had a continuity. There was an infill here. That's where the elevator was. We're thinking what they did is they took off some part of the brick and didn't put it back. So this is, some part of it is different than this. So the reason for not keeping the brick, beyond the fact that I don't know that it'll ever look as good as this, is it's because we don't know that we have a continuous brick. In this facade, in this portion, I would imagine it needs to be clean. It cannot be half-half.
Your drawn elevation shows black and steel.
Going down there, that's
I
why.
think it's because how many times we've gone back and forth on this.
I
but
understand. but
We're
I think-
open to suggestions, let's just say.
Or working closely with staff, because
Yeah.
I think revealing some of these conditions are going to suggest exactly how to proceed with some of the details.
But the question, I would assume that the brick that's there is the same brick that was used to close in the windows above, which was not the primary brick, but it was a brick that came in the windows after the elevator was put in. Do you think that's the case?
You know, the scheme started with being fully brick, and we were advised to take the cover off. When we took the cover off, we are starting to think that this was an infill of much rougher kind, just like that beam that was amputated and some brown steel piece was put in. And this was done in much better handling. So the truth is, I don't think it's as good. We've looked at it closely, but we won't know until we sandblast or clean it up, something happens. So yeah, it's debate, and I would say even for the residents and the board itself, they would have preferred to keep the brick for cost reasons initially, but I think when they understood that the brick itself may not be so good, they agreed that it might be, they're open to the cladding idea.
And the glass is clear? Part glass is dark, clear, what is
Clear,
that?
glass is clear.
All right, any other questions for now? Okay, we'll take testimony. Christabel Duff?
Since we can't have what was present historically, there still must be ways of sealing it that are less intrusive than steel frames, which are really hopefully help the context of the style. Some other solution can be followed, shutters, rigid glass, something else than steel plates or bolts.
Thank you. Barbara Zay?
HDC is happy to see the restoration and extension of the cast iron column included in this proposal and commends the applicant on this aspect of the project. We would ask, though, that the flush metal panels be considered to the same degree effect to the wall and store. It's very uninviting from the street. HDC would suggest the use of alternative materials such as frosted glass, black glass, optical shutters, or opaque fill windows in order to achieve privacy and darkness of the interior.
Just a question, Barbara, are you talking about that infill where they're putting the metal versus the brick? To, to put something which is more transparent but still gives them privacy? Okay, thank you. Are there any more speakers? All right. Yes, Roberta.
So is that attached above to something that's, what is that attached? It looks like it's attached to what I thought was a transom.
You're talking about this,
Yeah.
okay. You're talking about this image, right?
Yes, is that's not, what's above the door? What is that?
This part.
What do you see?
So what you're seeing from underneath is a piece of steel, and I have a bigger detail.
Oh, I meant above. So above is also steel?
Yeah, this this is steel, this is a steel fascia, that's a steel column, that's that black steel column, the face of the black steel column. We're trying to kind of take it out of being painted box that it is. So we're putting a fascia on it. Is that?
No, above, so above your canopy that's metal panel?
This is the plane of the brick essentially. This
That's
is the
brick?
Yeah, that would, no, it's not the brick, but it's that face of, that's the plane of the, like on right and left of you, that's the face of the building.
And the material is,
It's the steel.
so it is steel there too?
Right, above the canopy is steel. And if I understood correctly the question before where someone said glass, the wall, this wall is elevator.
Yeah, no, it'll be something opaque, I think they weren't saying see-through glass, it was just.
Just put a translucent something over brick.
Something else other than the steel.
We didn't like the idea of, I mean, in meatpacking district, we put glass over brick once. Don't like the resulting effect.
Right, I mean, the question is, I think, question is whether to mimic this blind window, this sealed window issue in the facade. I mean, from the comments, from some of the comments, one would think that they'd want for there to be, for it to look open, but it's not open. There's an elevator behind. Right.
Serious triple brick layers and elevator.
Right. So I think it could use just and I agree. I don't know that the steel is the right answer. I don't know that it's the wrong answer either, though. But just to reference this issue of blinding that, or the fact that it had once been opened and is now sealed because there's a mechanical system behind, I think would be appropriate to express.
Well, the only thing is, I'm not sure historically it was open ever. I don't have any idea. It looks like it might have been a staircase or some other kind of means of going up and down. I don't know what it was there before they did. What we infer is that they did this to be able to have a bigger opening to go into the entrance, that they widened that's obvious. And they put a column here, a steel here, and must have been an elevator upgrade behind it. May have been an elevator there from the 30s, but the building was built in 1800s. So, it's my guess that this was intended to be filled. And when we looked at the facade as a whole, we saw it as two halves with this sort of vertical, strengthening the vertical, coming down like a plinth. No historicizing with the idea of steel, the steel being merely a cladding to counterpoint the brick because we just don't feel we can compete with it.
Right.
But when you say you can't compete with the brick, meaning that,
I mean, the details of brick and the kind of existing, what I have to work with isn't good enough.
okay, so you'd have to remove this brick, put
And
new
then
brick,
match a new
and
brick
then
to
try
the
and get the
existing.
brick to read as a part of this structure, and you feel you won't be able to do that?
No, because we felt that we have to repeat some of this sort of proportion,
Mhm.
and the way they've come right up to the inches away from the face of the cast iron on this gray surface. This is painted brick right now.
Mhm.
It doesn't have even room to give you that kind of depth and shadows that are so significant to this kind of possibility.
Sorry.
This shadow being, it's not like a flat plane of brick. This is a little insert.
So is the elevator in fact behind? Is there
Yes.
space between? Is there space between the face and the elevator? Can you see the elevator wall? What do you see? When you remove
elevator-
this whole situation, what do you see?
The elevator is right butt up behind this. And,
So
And
for
it's a
this to
new
be
elevator.
just glass,
hmm,
for it to be glass, what would we see if we looked through the glass
probably the mechanical shaft.
of the elevator?
Yeah.
And how do you feel about that?
Don't know that I don't like terrible surprises, Elevators are not that elegant
Right.
necessarily. If you design one in advance, I'm sure you could make those cables look fabulous, but I'm sure this is some garbage that.
Right, but just to go back, the choice of having this metal panel was because that's a material that you see in the district, and I believe you work with staff on that, is that correct?
It's definitely a material that we see in the district.
And you see
We
it-
have done it in the district, in those non-landmark buildings and some landmarks in the past. The staff did not see an enormous issue with it. Of course, they did not guide me to steel. They just said, be sure of your brick initially. We have analyzed materials that will endure and age elegantly. This is a big issue, of course, because whatever I do, because it's a sheathing, it could look bad very shortly thereafter. So steel is low maintenance, can look good over years for co-op board of size of 6 to 7 units. So we took a lot of things into consideration that we think in the long term will be elegant.
Okay. I think that seems okay. Does anybody have concerns about that? I think that I would agree with Adi on the issue of, trying to introduce transparency when in fact that's not what it is. And since you have glass on either side, I think overall in the facade there's enough sort of transparency. So metal, and it seems there's a legitimate argument to be made by going back to brick, and if the brick doesn't match, it may actually be more problematic. But so metal's a material that we've seen in the district. Does anybody have concerns about that?
I mean, the only other thing would be maybe an opaque glass, back painted glass in black back painted glass, or sandblast of some kind, or some kind of opaquing of the glass so that the glass is the surface that you encounter on the street. I don't know. That would be the other approach.
I have no strong feelings about that.
I like that.
Okay. Any thoughts elsewhere? The recommendation would be to change that panel to, did you want to say exactly what it is that you're talking about?
If others agree, for that storefront panel to be glass or back painted glass. So if you want to conceal the elevator, it can be concealed, but on the street surface, it's consistent with the glass that we meet everywhere else at that building. I think is an alternative to the steel, which may be very hard. I don't have a huge problem with the steel, but I think the glass might be better.
If that's the case, do we
Yes.
carry that lintel across that separates what appears to be a transom from the rest of the window? Do we carry that across at that?
Right, I mean,
Or do you make one large?
let me just say one thing about the
It's very
glass.
schematic at this point.
Right.
I agree.
I don't know, honestly, I don't know how the glass will look with the fact that then you have to kind of join these two portions on either side and try and reconcile where their transoms are. I think the point that you were making, but which one are you going to follow through across? I don't really have a problem with the steel, but, so, I know, Chris, you have a problem with the steel.
At the street level, the lower portion is the black back painted glass. I agree that we've seen this with at least it gives the appearance of glass along the walkway there, the lowest portion. It's not a pretty.
Right, I just don't know what it was historically. I'm not sure. Was it glass historically or? No, so that.
Probably not.
It was always an elevator, so I think that.
Yeah.
Do you feel strongly about that, or, okay?
No, I mean, it seems to me that the transom is the problem, right? There shouldn't be a transom there at all, but we're not going to be removing the transoms from the other storefronts to the right, right?
That other storefront doesn't have, right, that's not a part of this application, and I think,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Overall, it's an improvement than what they have right
Major
now. I think it's
improvement.
a,
It's what they've got here.
Yeah.
It's
I'm okay with what they
overall,
have.
I think it's a
Yeah.
positive. And I think if we like, we could include that some of the more details can be worked with staff. How's that? Okay? All right. Roberta, do you want to close the hearing? And Roberta, would you like to read the resolution? Yes, thank you.
In the matter of 150 Thompson Street, AKA 474-478 West Broadway, Soho Cast Iron Historic District Extension. Application is to replace ground floor infill and install a marquee. I recommend approval with the same modifications.
Yeah.
With modifications, finding that the proposed alterations to the entrance infill and removal of the modern wood cladding will not alter, eliminate, or conceal any significant architectural features, that the replication of the missing cast iron pier will help return this significant component of the building base, that the configuration of the infill featuring a metal and glass door and fixed display window and bulkhead will be in keeping with entrance infill historically found at buildings of this type, style, and age. That the finish and materials of the brick, of the black steel cladding and marquee will be explored with staff, and more details will be presented, and that, okay, to ensure that it be compatible with the character of the district and in keeping with the material palette of this building, and that this modestly sized and simply designed steel marquee at the base of this building will be harmonious with the industrial character of the district and will remain subordinate to the significant architectural features.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This application's been approved.